Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm John Clarke, and today our guest is Cate Masterson, and Cate's the director of the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame on Union Avenue, directly across from the racetrack. I'm sure everyone knows where the museum is. Cate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Happy to have you. And I was just interested on a personal note. How did you get started in racing? I mean, when you were young, did somebody take you to the Saratoga racetrack? I know you're from Troy, so not too far away. I know you went to Sacred Heart over in Fairfield uh, for college. But what got you rolling in your interest in the horses?
The advertising and marketing, growing up in Troy and hearing it's post time and party time, the summer place to be, the commercials on television and the radio ads that I'd hear as a little girl, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I need to get there. And at the time, my parents said it was no place for children. They didn't feel that children should be there, even though 25 years later, I disagree with them. I've disagreed all along. I first went to the racetrack for my 16th birthday, which is the end of August, and I've never missed a summer since.
I think my parents felt the same way. So my debut was deferred until the 1963 Kentucky Derby when I was in college. The museum's great. I've been there many times. I'm interested in the history, though. I know it goes back to the 50s, and I know next year you have a 75th anniversary coming up. How did the museum get started, and what have been some of the major milestones over that 75-year period?
Absolutely. So you are correct. We were incorporated as the National Museum of Racing in 1950. And it was a group of horsemen from around the country who settled on Saratoga Springs and felt that this was the home, that there was a need for a National Museum of Racing, a home to collect the memorabilia and the items and to tell the story because it had been around since the 1800s. So we were incorporated in 1950. In 1951, we opened our first museum in Congress Park. So we were part of where the History Museum is. And our first item was Lexington's horseshoe. That was gifted to us and that was on display, and it is still on display here in our pre-Civil War gallery. So that was pretty incredible. And then after 4 years at Congress Park, or during that time, the chairman and the board of directors, who we were founded, one of the founding fathers for the museum was Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, who, of course, everyone, Mary Lou was with us just up until 2019. So they said that it needs a permanent home. So they created and built from scratch a building here at 191 Union Avenue. And so we opened the museum in 1955, and that coincides with the first Hall of Fame class.
All right. Well, uh, I have to say I've been there many times already this year, and I've seen all of the very interesting exhibits you have. Just thought I'd mention three of them. The Remarkable Ruffian being one, I believe, in the John von Stade gallery, about Ruffian the racehorse, the Paul Mellon exhibit, and also the Harry M. Stevens exhibit about concessions and the development of his business at racetracks. And apparently, he would like to say he was the guy who invented the hot dog. That may be an exaggeration. I'm not sure. But I thought today, Cate, if we could just talk about the Ruffian exhibit, the Remarkable Ruffian, the race filly. And could you tell us about, how that exhibit got started? Who had the idea? How did it come together? Did you have a curator putting together the gallery there? And anything you'd like to say about that? I'm very interested.
Absolutely. So our museum historian is Mike Veach. And Mike Veach was a local school teacher here. He's a racing enthusiast. His relative was Sylvester Veach, who's in the Hall of Fame, and his cousin is John Veach, who's a Hall of Fame trainer.
Yeah.
So Mike's roots go deep into Saratoga. He was here when Ruffian did run. Ruffian's veterinarian was Dr. Pendergast, who actually came in and saw the exhibit recently, which we were thrilled about. But the exhibit came about because it's the 50th anniversary, and she was just a beloved filly who, to this day, people talk about, and she was remarkable. So we do have a curator here. Her name is Jessica Clarke. So Jessica started with us. She's here almost 2 years. And as soon as she came, this was on our schedule to talk about Ruffian and to tell her story and all the medical advances that have happened, in the last 50 years. So it's a wonderful exhibition. The owners were the Janney family, and they had all of her, at the time it was called the Triple Tiara trophies. So they were very gracious to loan those to us. Anthony Alonso, who's a very known artist, he since passed away, but his family, he did a beautiful portrait of Ruffian. And so that's kind of one of the featured items within the exhibition. And what's really special about it is guests go in. We are a fine arts museum. We are a Hall of Fame, but when fans, whether you know her story or not, you go within this Von Stade gallery and you look at photographs and images and her races that are shown on the screen. And it's just a very quiet and special tribute to a wonderful racehorse.
I actually remember watching it on television. It was a really big deal, the match race between Ruffian and Foolish Pleasure back, I think in 1975. I'm not sure of my date there. But one thing I learned from the exhibit was that the race between Ruffian and Foolish Pleasure, Ruffian being a filly or a girl horse, and Foolish Pleasure being a colt, was compared to Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King a couple of years earlier, the same type of competition between male and female. That's an interesting thing that I gleaned from the exhibit. But when you go to the museum, you absolutely have to see that. And another thing you have to see is the film in the Hall of Fame now, narrated by Bob Costas. It's called "What It Takes: Journey to the Hall of Fame." It is absolutely spectacular. Not only the film, but how the film is presented. Cate, can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So our chairman's John Hendrickson, and he and the board were tasked with, we were running out of space. So the Hall of Fame for thoroughbred racing, we are the official thoroughbred racing Hall of Fame here in Saratoga Springs. And we are unique in the fact that we induct active living Hall of Fame members, and they can continue on with their career. So when a plaque is created at their induction, like Wayne Lucas, who was inducted, 30, 40 years ago, his career has continued, and he just won the Preakness Stakes not long ago. So we were running out of space within the gallery itself. So we all kind of put our heads together. What could we do? So we created these 9 interactive screens that have 3 pages for each Hall of Fame member. One is the plaque itself, so you can see what the plaque looked like and how it read. Their achievements, photographs, videos, accomplishments. But what's really neat about it is when a Hall of Famer like Steve Asmussen gets a record win here at Saratoga, the next morning it's updated. Brian Bouyer is our communications and Hall of Fame director. He can go in. If Johnny V wins a race at Breeders' Cup, we can update it. Lucas winning the Preakness, update. So, there are those traditionalists who miss touching the plaques, but our sport is unique. So with that, we said, okay, if we're going to create a Hall of Fame gallery, it's time to upgrade our film. So we found Donna Lawrence Productions in Louisville, Kentucky, And she created this immersive, interactive 16-minute signature film, What It Takes Journey to the Hall of Fame, where screens descend from the center. And we've already actually updated it once. So every 3 years. So we launched it on Derby Day in 2020, which wound up being September 5th. And then in 2023, so just last summer, we brought out a new version. We changed just a few minutes. We added Man of War, we added some additional Hall of Fame members, and we will do the same every 3 years going forward.
Um, I just love the way the film looks, and uh, I'm just impressed by the four-sided nature. And you sit around the edge of the room and view it. And I'm going to be back in the museum tomorrow morning. I'm going to watch it again. Um, you've got the Hall of Fame induction ceremony coming up on August the 2nd, I believe, at the Fasig-Tipton Sales Pavilion. Currently, there, and I'm holding up your annual guide now, but I learned from the guide that there are 487 inductees now in the Hall of Fame. You've got 9 more coming up. I think people listening to the podcast should be most interested in 2 of the racehorses, Justify and Gunrunner, who'll be going into the first time, and also a contemporary jockey who's still racing, Joel Rosario. Kate, could you tell us a little bit about the induction ceremony? I think you've got Tom Durkin as Master of Ceremonies. That's all as popular. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So it's really wonderful because it's open to the public, which is nice. So there's seating upstairs. It is at the Fasig-Tipton Sales Pavilion. It will begin at 10:30 a.m. And it's also live streamed on our website. So if you are across the country and you can't make it here, you can just visit racingmuseum.org, and there'll be a link that you can click and watch the ceremony live. You are correct. I think the living, active Hall of Fame inductees are always the most popular, but the historic review and the Pillars of the Turf are just such incredible categories, and the stories and the information. I mean, Aristides was the first winner of the Kentucky Derby, and I think it's very elusive. There's no photographs of him. There's stories behind his racing and his career, but it's really challenging. And Keeneland production company, Keeneland, the racetrack and the sales pavilion, and Keeneland, they produce these videos that are absolutely incredible. I mean, they take the research that goes into these videos, and then there are videos, so they'll be on the Hall of Fame induction or the Hall of Fame pages within the Hall of Fame gallery on the interactives, and they're just incredible. So it's a great ceremony. It'll last about an hour and a half. There will be Hall of Fame guides there. Our Hall of Fame guides are always complimentary, so they are within the museum as well. But it's an incredible class. So we're looking forward to a great event.
Tom Durkin has a new job. I read yesterday in the Saratoga Report. He's going
Yeah,
to be teaching over at Saratoga Catholic, teaching a course on public speaking, I guess. So he's so popular, and he still does the tours at the museum. Is that right?
absolutely. So
No,
he's just incredible. I've been very fortunate, as I mentioned. This is my 25th year in Saratoga. I didn't give you a little bit of my background, but I worked my first 10 years for Ed Lewis, who is the public relations firm here in Saratoga Springs. And then after that, I worked for a racehorse trainer, Kieran McLaughlin, for 8 years. So I
no.
traveled New York, Kentucky, Florida, a little bit in California. And Kieran he's no longer training horses, but he is the jockey's agent for Luis Saez, who was the winner of the Belmont Stakes with Dornoch, and now recently the Haskell. But so I've known Tom. I used to hand deliver those announcements to the announcer's booth. It's WNYT's Day at the Races, view the winner's circle. So I used to go up and visit Tom, and he blows me away. I mean, he's a historian himself, but with the race calling, he used to have a dictionary on his desk, and he would just open it up, flip it to a page, and pick a word, and he would use that word within a race. Just an incredible human being. And yes, he does do the tours here. He's on the museum's board. He does Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So he does his signature tours at 11 a.m. And those tours finish with the 12 o'clock showing of the film.
Yeah. I've taken the tour, and of course, I had to ask him to do his famous call about R, where he goes R, and of course he was willing to do that, and I think everyone liked that. Kate, what's the process for deciding on who actually is inducted into the Hall of Fame? I'm sure there are many contenders, but how does that work?
Basically, all the rules are on our website. So if you'd like to go to, nominations, you can visit theracingmuseum.org. But anyone can nominate for any category. So again, we have the contemporary class, and there's restrictions. Jockeys have to hold a license for 20 years to be eligible. Trainers have to hold a license for 25 years to be eligible. Then you have your pillars of the turf, which are kind of the exemplars of the sport. And you have your historic review, and there's also a steeplechase category. So anyone can write in at any time or mail in a nomination. Once it's received, there is an internal nominating committee that reviews all of it. And then when the classes are announced of who's up for voting, there's about 165 voters, and a nominee requires 51% of the vote. And those who vote have the option to vote. So say you have two jockeys up, they can vote for both jockeys. So they can, but they need the nominees need 51%, which is tough.
Yeah. Well, you and I are going to have to talk sometime because I actually do have a nominee. So we can wait, and I'll go through the official process for that. But something I'm looking forward to doing. Well, this has been great. I don't want to keep you too long. I just end up by again holding up the Hall of Fame guide, and what I read in the guide is a quote from John Hendrickson, who is chair of the Racing Museum. And John Hendrickson says that the Saratoga Racing Museum is the best sports museum in the country. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been so sure, but I think now with all the improvements that have been made, and especially with the expansion in 2020, it's a big claim, but I think he's right, and I think it is the best racing museum, the best sports museum in the country. So maybe that's a good place to leave it, Kate. Thank you very much. Anything you'd like to add before we sign off, or?
I would love to. So for all the locals, I know this is Saratoga Report. We are a national museum, but we're very fortunate to be here in Saratoga Springs, and we have a great membership program. We're open year round. So come Labor Day, we go 5 days a week. We go Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 4, but we're still open. We have member events, and our individual membership, which gets you admission and a guest, is $65. So it's pretty incredible. We have wine and cheese. We have a holiday party. We do a countdown event in February. So we really, and next year's our 75th anniversary, which is pretty incredible. So each department here is working on how we can help promote and what we can do for 75 years of the National Museum of Racing in Saratoga Springs.
And on Saturdays during the race meet, you have the Saturday socials. So they'll have one of those tomorrow, starting at 9 o'clock, I think. But again, thank you very much, and appreciate you being on the podcast. And hope to meet you soon at the museum.
Great, thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Kate.